The black woman who beat the billionaire, and won something he never expected. $200,000. That's what the billionaire paid for a painting Emily desperately needed. She walked away from that auction defeated, furious, ready to never think about Anthony Lake again. Then he followed her into the hallway and said 5 words that changed everything. What if we both won? She had no idea he wasn't talking about the painting anymore. He was talking about her heart, and he was willing to bid everything he had to win it. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think about the last time a story made you feel something real. Made your heart race. Made tears fall without permission. Made you remember why being human is so beautifully complicated. That's what we do here at CJ Stories. Whether you're returning or just discovering us, welcome home. This is your safe space for tears, laughter, hope, and everything in between. Today's story will take you somewhere unexpected. It'll make you think. It'll make you feel. And I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But here's the thing, the magic only works if you stay till the very end. No skipping. Just you, me, and a story that might just change how you see the world. If it moves you, let me know you're here, subscribe, like, and share this with someone whose heart needs touching today. Ready? Let's step into today's story. The thing about winning, Emily Allison had learned, was that sometimes you didn't realize what you'd actually won until much later. She was about to learn that lesson all over again. June 15, 2024. Boston's Museum of Fine Arts. 7:47 p.m. Emily stood at the back of the Remus Auditorium, her auction paddle resting against her thigh as she studied the crowd. At 35, she'd attended enough charity auctions to know the players by sight. Old money sat in the front rows, their bidding subtle and their checkbooks infinite. New money clustered in the middle, eager to prove themselves. And people like her, art consultants hired to acquire specific pieces for specific clients, positioned themselves strategically near the exits. Tonight, she was here for Lot 47. A small Romare Bearden collage that her client had been hunting for 3 years. Her budget was firm, $200,000, not a penny more. She'd done her research, knew the provenance, understood the market. This should be straightforward. She smoothed her hands down the front of her emerald silk dress, a splurge she'd justified because confidence was half the battle in rooms like this. Her natural hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and she'd worn her mother's pearl earrings for luck. The auction was moving slowly through the early lots. Emily checked her phone. A text from her best friend Sienna waited, remember, cool and collected. You've got this. Emily smiled and slipped her phone back into her clutch. That's when she first noticed him. He sat 4 rows from the front, impossible to miss even in a room full of Boston's elite. Tall, probably 6'2", with dark blonde hair that looked deliberately unstyled in that way that only expensive haircuts achieved. Sharp jawline. Broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit that was definitely bespoke. He hadn't bid on anything yet, but his paddle rested casually across his knee, number 47. Emily's stomach tightened. Number 47. The same number as her target lot. She'd seen him before, she realized. Not in person, but in the business section of the Globe. Anthony Lake. 37 years old. Billionaire. CEO of Lake Industries, a tech conglomerate his father had built from nothing. Since taking over 5 years ago after his father's death, Anthony had tripled the company's value and earned a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and completely uninterested in anything that didn't serve a strategic purpose. So what was a tech billionaire doing at an art auction? Emily pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter. She had a job to do. The auctioneer's voice carried through the room. Lot 42, sold to paddle 189 for $110,000. Getting closer. Emily positioned herself where she'd have a clear view of the auctioneer and the competition. She rolled her shoulders back, exhaled slowly. Lot 43, a stunning portrait by Cahind Wiley. The bidding was brisk. Emily watched Anthony Lake. He didn't move, didn't even seem particularly interested. His attention was on his phone, his expression unreadable. 3 lots later, the auctioneer smiled. And now, Lot 47. Carolina Morning by Romare Bearden, 1974. Mixed media collage on board. We'll start the bidding at $75,000. Emily's paddle went up immediately. $75,000 to paddle 203. $80,000, paddle 47. Emily's head whipped around. Anthony Lake had raised his paddle without even looking up from his phone, his expression bored. Her jaw tightened. She raised her paddle again. $85,000, paddle 203. $100,000, paddle 47. This time Anthony did look up, and his gaze swept the room until it landed on her. For a moment, their eyes met. His were gray-blue, sharp with intelligence, and utterly calm. Emily lifted her paddle higher. $110,000, paddle 203. 125,000, paddle 47. The room had gone quiet, sensing a battle. Emily could feel eyes turning toward them, watching the contest unfold. She had 75,000 left in her budget. She needed to be smart about this. 135,000, paddle 203. Anthony's response was immediate. 150,000, paddle 47. The ease with which he threw around money made Emily's teeth clench. This was probably pocket change to him. A whim. Meanwhile, her client had saved for years to afford this piece. 160,000, paddle 203. She was over budget now, but she'd explained to her client. Make it work. 175,000, paddle 47. Anthony still looked bored. He'd probably spend more than this on dinner tonight. Emily's heart pounded. She had maybe one more bid in her before this became irresponsible. She caught the auctioneer's eye and nodded. 185,000, paddle 203. The auctioneer looked at Anthony expectantly. The room held its breath. Anthony raised his paddle with one finger. Didn't even sit up straighter. 200,000, paddle 47. Emily felt her stomach drop. She couldn't go higher. She wouldn't. Her client's budget had limits, and she had a responsibility to respect that, even if the man bidding against her probably wouldn't notice 200,000 missing from his bank account. The auctioneer's gavel hovered. 200,000 going once. Going twice. Emily lowered her paddle. Sold to paddle 47 for $200,000. Polite applause rippled through the room. Anthony set his paddle down and returned his attention to his phone as if nothing had happened. Emily stood very still, processing the loss. 3 years of searching. Her client would be devastated. She needed air. The auction continued as Emily made her way through the side door and into the museum's marble hallway. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked toward the grand staircase, pulling out her phone to send the bad news to her client. Before she could type the message, a voice behind her stopped her cold. You bid well. Emily turned. Anthony Lake stood 5 feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression curious rather than smug. Up close, he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones. A small scar near his left eyebrow. Eyes that seemed to actually see her rather than look through her. She lifted her chin. Not well enough, apparently. You were strategic. Disciplined. You had a number and you stuck to it. He tilted his head slightly. Most people let ego take over in a bidding war. And you? Emily asked, her tone cool. What took over for you? Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Curiosity. Expensive curiosity. I can afford it. It wasn't said arrogantly, just factually. Somehow that made it worse. Emily slipped her phone back into her clutch. Well, congratulations on your purchase, Mr. Lake. I hope you enjoy it. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her again. You know who I am. You're not exactly unknown in Boston. And you are? He stepped closer, not invasively, but enough that she caught the scent of his cologne. Something clean and expensive. I don't think we've met. We haven't. And we don't need to. Emily kept her voice pleasant but firm. Enjoy your evening. This time she did walk away, her head high even though frustration burned in her chest. She made it halfway down the grand staircase before she heard footsteps behind her. Wait. Emily stopped on the landing and turned. Anthony stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The Bearden, he said. Why did you want it? That's none of your business. Humor me. Emily crossed her arms. Why do you want it? He descended the stairs until he was 1 step above her, which put them almost at eye level. I asked first. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Emily saw calculation in his eyes, but also genuine interest. Like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Against her better judgment, she answered. I have a client who's been searching for that specific piece for 3 years. It was created the year his mother was born, in the town where she grew up. She passed away 2 years ago, and he wanted it for his home. To remember her. Something in Anthony's expression shifted. Softened, almost imperceptibly. And you? Emily asked. What's your reason? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its casual tone. My father collected Bearden. Had 12 of his pieces in his study. When he died 5 years ago, I sold most of his collection. I kept one. Last month, my mother asked me about the others, and I realized I'd made a mistake. That I'd let go of something that mattered because I was too focused on moving forward to see what I was leaving behind. Emily hadn't expected honesty. It caught her off guard, made him suddenly human instead of just an obstacle. I'm sorry, she said quietly. About your father. I'm sorry about your client's mother. They stood there on the museum stairs, the sounds of the auction muffled behind them, both silent. Finally, Anthony spoke. "What if we both got what we wanted?" Emily frowned. "I don't follow." "I'll sell you the Bearden. For what you would have paid. $185,000. She stared at him. "You just spent $200,000 on it." "I'm aware. So you'd take a loss. I'd take a solution." He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. It was an auction listing for a different Bearden piece, from a private sale in New York next month. "This is the one my father had. Same series, same year. I'll buy this one instead." Emily looked from the phone to his face. "Why would you do that?" "Because your client's reason is better than mine." He slipped his phone back into his pocket. "And because I'd like to take you to dinner." There it was. Emily had been waiting for the catch. "I'm not interested in a pity sale or a charity date." "Good. I'm not offering either." His gaze held hers. "I'm offering a fair transaction and dinner with someone who knows Romare Bearden's work well enough to bid against me. That's rare enough to be interesting." Emily should say no. She should take the Bearden offer and walk away. Getting involved with a billionaire who bid on art like he was buying groceries seemed like a terrible idea. But something in his eyes stopped her. Not arrogance. Not pity. Just genuine interest. "One dinner," she heard herself say. "And the Bearden sale is separate. I won't owe you anything." "Agreed." He extended his hand. "Anthony Lake." She took it. His grip was firm, warm. "Emily Allison." "Emily." He said her name like he was testing how it felt. "When are you free?" "I'll need to check my schedule." "Of course." He pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. "Heavy stock, simple design. My direct number. Call me when you know." Emily tucked the card into her clutch. "I'll have my attorney contact you about the sale. I'll have mine expedite the paperwork." He smiled then, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, less severe. "And Emily?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you didn't stop bidding earlier." Made the victory more interesting. She couldn't help it. She smiled back. "You haven't won anything yet, Mr. Lake." "Anthony," he corrected. "And we'll see about that." Emily descended the rest of the stairs, acutely aware of his gaze following her. When she reached the bottom, she glanced back. He was still standing on the landing, watching her with that same curious expression. She turned away and walked toward the exit, her heart beating faster than it should. Behind her, Anthony Lake stood on the museum stairs, a small smile playing at his lips. He'd come tonight to buy a painting. He was leaving with something much more interesting. A mystery he very much wanted to solve. 2 weeks had passed since the auction. June 22, 2024, and Emily still hadn't called. Anthony sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Lake Tower, Boston's skyline spread before him like a corporate kingdom. His assistant had just left after running through his afternoon schedule. 4 meetings, 2 conference calls, a dinner with investors. The usual rhythm of his life. His phone sat on the desk, silent. He picked it up, pulled up his contacts, scrolled to the number he'd saved under Emily Allison, art consultant. His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he set the phone down. He didn't chase. He never had to. If she was interested, she'd call. His phone rang. He grabbed it faster than he should have. Anthony Lake. "Mr. Lake, this is Rebecca Chen from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling regarding the Bearden acquisition for our client, Emily Allison." Anthony leaned back in his chair, ignoring the small stab of disappointment. "Of course. My legal team has the paperwork ready." "Excellent. Ms. Allison wanted me to convey her appreciation for your generosity in this matter." "It's not generosity. It's a fair exchange." There was a pause. "Nevertheless, she's grateful. The piece will mean a great deal to her client." Anthony drummed his fingers on his desk. "Tell Ms. Allison she can express her gratitude in person. Over dinner. If she's still interested." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll relay the message, Mr. Lake." After they ended the call, Anthony returned to the contract on his screen. He made it through 2 paragraphs before his concentration fractured. This was ridiculous. He was a 37-year-old man who ran a multi-billion-dollar company. He didn't sit around waiting for phone calls like a teenager. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Emily. Is Saturday at 7 too soon?" Anthony smiled at his screen and typed back immediately. "Saturday at 7 is perfect. I'll pick you up. I'll meet you there." "Where?" He thought for a moment, then typed an address. Not one of the usual places. Somewhere different. "Rochelle's. South End. It's small." "I know it. See you then." Anthony set his phone down and tried to return to work. The smile stayed on his face for the next hour. Saturday arrived with unexpected rain. Emily stood under the awning of Rochelle's, watching water stream down the windows of the small French restaurant Anthony had chosen. She'd expected something flashy. Something expensive and exclusive where billionaires took women to impress them. Rochelle's was a neighborhood place. 30 seats, soft lighting, the kind of restaurant where the owner knew your name. She liked that he'd surprised her. The rain had frizzed the edges of her hair despite her umbrella. She wore a simple black dress and her mother's pearls again, her raincoat folded over her arm. Through the window, she could see Anthony already seated at a corner table, reading something on his phone. He looked different in the soft light. Less severe. More human. Emily took a breath and pushed open the door. Anthony looked up immediately, and his entire face changed when he smiled. He stood as she approached, and she noticed he wasn't wearing a suit. Just dark slacks and a blue button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. "You found it," he said. "Your directions were good." She let him help with her coat, hyper-aware of his hands near her shoulders. They sat, and a waiter appeared with menus and water. Emily studied Anthony across the candlelit table. In the 2 weeks since the auction, she'd done her research. Read articles. Watched interviews. Learned that he was known for being ruthless in business, brilliant with technology, and completely private about his personal life. No scandals. No public relationships. Just work. "You're wondering why I chose this place," Anthony said. "I am, actually. My father used to bring me here. Before Lake Industries became what it is now, when we were just getting started. We'd come every Saturday night, sit at this exact table, and he'd make me present my ideas for the week." Anthony glanced around the small restaurant. "I haven't been back since he died. Thought maybe it was time." Emily heard the subtext. He was sharing something personal. Letting her in. "That must be hard," she said quietly. "Coming back without him." "It is. But also good. I'd forgotten how much I liked this place." He met her eyes. "Felt like the right spot to see if you're as interesting over dinner as you were on those museum stairs. And if I'm not? Then we'll have a nice meal and part as friends." The waiter returned for their order. They both chose the cocoa vin, which made them smile at the coincidence. When they were alone again, Anthony leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your work. How does someone become an art consultant?" Emily wrapped her hands around her water glass. "By accident, mostly. I studied art history at Welch, thought I'd work in a museum. Did that for a few years, but I kept having clients ask me to help them find specific pieces. Build collections. Eventually I realized I was better at connecting people with art than I was at curating exhibits." "Better how?" "Museums are about preservation. Education. Those things matter. But private collecting is about passion. About finding the piece that speaks to someone so personally they need to live with it every day." She paused. "I like facilitating that connection. Making someone fall in love." Anthony's expression was intent. "You're a matchmaker." "I suppose I am. For art. Do you collect yourself?" Emily laughed softly. "On my budget? I have 3 pieces. A small Alma Thomas print my mother left me. A photograph by Carrie Mae Weems I saved for 2 years to buy. And a painting by a local artist I met at an open studio event." "Not a Bearden?" "Not yet. Someday, maybe." She tilted her head. "What about you? Do you still collect, or did you stop after your father died?" Something shadowed his expression. "I stopped. Sold most of it, like I said. Told myself it was practical. That I needed to focus on the company, not maintain collections I didn't have time to appreciate." He was quiet for a moment. "I think I was just trying to not miss him." "Did it work?" "No." The simple honesty of it hit Emily square in the chest. She understood that impulse. After her mother died 4 years ago, she'd packed away all her photographs for 6 months. As if not seeing her face would make the loss hurt less. "My mom passed in 2020, Emily said. "I'm 35 now. I was 31 then. For a while after, I couldn't look at the art she'd left me. Couldn't even go into my office because I'd hung her favorite piece above my desk. I thought distance would help." "What changed?" "A client hired me to find a painting for her daughter's wedding. Something about new beginnings. I spent 3 weeks searching, and when I finally found the perfect piece, I realized I'd been looking for things that reminded me of my mother the entire time. The colors she loved. The subjects she'd painted herself." Emily smiled, though it trembled slightly. "I went home that night and unwrapped all her paintings. Put them back up. And it still hurt, but it was a better hurt. Like keeping her close instead of pushing her away." Anthony reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. Just a moment of connection, then he withdrew. "I'm glad you found your way back," he said. Their food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Emily told him about her best friend Sienna, who ran a bakery in Cambridge and had opinions about everything. Anthony talked about his work, but not in the rehearsed way of his interviews. He spoke about the challenge of innovation, of trying to build something meaningful rather than just profitable. You care about it, Emily observed. The work. It's not just business for you. Is that surprising? A little. The articles make you sound like you only care about the bottom line. Anthony's mouth quirked. I've read those articles. They're not entirely wrong. I do care about profitability. But profit is a measure of value created, not the value itself. He cut a piece of chicken, thoughtful. My father built Lake Industries because he wanted to solve problems. Make things better. Somewhere in the last 5 years, I think I forgot that. Got caught up in growth metrics and market share. What problems do you want to solve? He looked at her with those sharp gray-blue eyes. I'm still figuring that out. What about you? What problems does an art consultant solve? Emily considered the question. Loneliness, sometimes. I had a client last year, a widow who'd lost her husband of 40 years. Her house felt empty. We spent months finding pieces that brought her joy. Art that made her smile when she walked past it. Small moments of beauty to fill the quiet. That's not small. That's everything. The intensity in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the table, something unspoken building in the space between them. Anthony cleared his throat. I bought the Bearden. The one from New York. You did? Had it shipped to Boston yesterday. My mother came over this morning to see it. She cried. His voice softened. I'd forgotten that art could do that. Make someone feel that much. Where did you hang it? My study. Where my father kept his. Anthony paused. Would you come see it sometime? I'd value your professional opinion. They both knew he wasn't really asking for a professional opinion. I'd like that, Emily said. They finished dinner talking about everything and nothing. Emily learned that Anthony ran 5 miles every morning at 6, that he'd lived in the same penthouse for 8 years, that he hated networking events but loved the rare moments when business felt like genuine problem-solving. Anthony discovered that Emily had a terrible singing voice but sang anyway, that she stress-baked cookies at 2 in the morning, that she'd been to 43 countries but never to Italy because she was saving it for when she could spend a full month there. When the check came, Anthony handled it before Emily could protest. They stepped out into the rain, which had softened to a gentle mist. The streets gleamed under the streetlights. Can I drive you home? Anthony asked. I live in Back Bay. It's not far. That's not an answer. Emily smiled. Yes. You can drive me home. His car was parked 2 blocks away. A sleek black Audi that probably cost more than Emily made in a year, but understated enough that it didn't scream wealth. Anthony opened the passenger door for her, and she caught that clean, expensive scent of his cologne again. The drive to her apartment took 15 minutes. They talked about the rain, about Boston in summer, about nothing important. But Emily was intensely aware of him beside her. The capable way he handled the car. The strong line of his profile in the passing streetlights. When they pulled up in front of her building, Anthony put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. I had a good time tonight, he said. So did I. Can I see you again? Emily turned to face him. I think you already know the answer to that. I'd still like to hear you say it. Yes. I'd like to see you again. Something in his expression eased. Relief, maybe. Next Saturday? I'm traveling for work. Back on Thursday. Friday then. Dinner again, or something else if you're tired of restaurants. There's a gallery opening in the Seaport Friday night. Local artists. Would you want to come with me? Anthony's face lit up in a way that made Emily's breath catch. I'd love that. They sat in the car for another moment, neither quite ready to end the evening. Rain pattered softly on the windshield. I should let you go, Anthony said finally. You should. But neither of them moved. Anthony reached over and tucked a loose curl behind her ear, his fingers gentle against her skin. Emily's breath caught. I'm really glad you bid against me, he said quietly. I'm glad you overpaid. He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. Then he withdrew his hand, and Emily felt the loss of contact like a physical thing. She got out of the car and walked to her building's entrance. At the door, she turned back. Anthony was still there, watching her through the rain-streaked window. She waved. He waved back. Inside her apartment, Emily leaned against the door and smiled at nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Anthony, thank you for tonight. Sleep well, Emily. She texted back, you too, Anthony. Then she added, and thank you for the Bearden. My client received it yesterday. He called me crying. Good tears? The best kind. She could almost hear his smile through the phone. That's all that matters then. See you Friday. Emily got ready for bed with a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. As she turned off her bedside lamp, her phone buzzed one more time. One more thing. You look beautiful when you smile. I plan to make you do it as often as possible. Emily read the message 3 times, then typed back, "That's a bold plan, Mr. Lake." "I'm a bold man, Ms. Allison. Good night." "Good night." Emily set her phone down and stared at her ceiling, too awake to sleep, too happy to care. Across the city, Anthony sat in his penthouse, looking at the Bearden hanging in his study. The one his father would have loved. The one that had somehow led him to a woman with dark eyes and a sharp mind and a smile that made him want to be better than he was. He picked up his phone and looked at her number. Then he did something he never did. He saved the text thread. Marked it as important. Because somehow, in the space of 2 weeks and 1 dinner, Emily Allison had become exactly that. Important. July slipped into August, and Emily found herself rearranging her entire life around a man she'd known for less than 2 months. Friday, August 9th, 2024. Emily's apartment in Back Bay had become a disaster zone of discarded outfit options. She was 35 years old, a successful professional, and she was acting like she was getting ready for prom. Sienna sat cross-legged on Emily's bed, eating takeout directly from the container. "You're overthinking this. It's just meeting his mother." "It's not just meeting his mother. It's meeting Patricia Lake." Emily held up 2 dresses. "The woman sits on the boards of half the cultural institutions in Boston. She probably has opinions about everything from my shoes to my career choices. She invited you to lunch. That's a good sign. Or she wants to inspect me in person before telling Anthony I'm not suitable." Sienna set down her food. "Okay, stop. Take a breath. Anthony is crazy about you. His mother isn't going to change that." Emily sank onto the bed beside her best friend. Sienna was right. The past 7 weeks had been something out of a dream. The gallery opening had turned into drinks that lasted until 2 in the morning. That had led to a Sunday afternoon at the Museum of Fine Arts, which had led to dinner, which had led to Anthony showing up at her office with coffee and pastries because he'd remembered her saying she had an early meeting. They'd spent nearly every free moment together. Talking, laughing, discovering each other in ways that felt both thrilling and terrifying. 3 weeks ago, he'd kissed her for the first time. They'd been walking along the esplanade at sunset, and he'd just stopped, turned to her, and said, "I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay." It had been more than okay. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from Anthony, "My mother is excited to meet you." Also mildly terrifying, but mostly excited. "I'll be there to protect you." Emily smiled and texted back, "I can handle myself, thank you." "I know you can. It's one of the things I love about you." Her breath caught. He'd said things close to that before. Called her remarkable, brilliant, fascinating. But this was the closest he'd come to the actual word. Love. She wasn't ready to think about that yet. Wasn't ready to examine the feeling blooming in her chest every time she saw his name on her phone. "You're smiling at your phone like a teenager," Sienna observed. "It's adorable and slightly concerning." "I really like him, see?" "I know, honey. That's what's scary, right? Because the last time you really liked someone." Emily's smile faded. "Devin was 3 years ago. I'm over it." "Are you?" "Because you haven't dated anyone seriously since he left." Devin. Who'd spent 2 years with her, met her friends, talked about future plans. Then accepted a job in London and asked her to come with him, except he'd already known she couldn't leave Boston. Her business was here. Her life was here. He'd asked anyway, and when she said no, he'd acted like she was choosing her career over him. Maybe she had been. Or maybe she just refused to uproot her entire existence for someone who should have loved her enough to stay. "Anthony is different," Emily said quietly. "How?" "He sees me. Not the version of me that fits his life. Just me." She looked at Sienna. "He drove to Plymouth last week because I mentioned I was consulting with a client there. Just to have lunch with me between meetings. He didn't have to do that." "No, he didn't. Which means he's either genuinely wonderful or setting you up for a spectacular fall." Sienna's expression softened. "I want him to be wonderful, Em. I really do. Just protect your heart a little, okay?" Emily nodded, but she knew it was already too late for that. Saturday, August 10th, 2024. Grill 23 in Back Bay. Patricia Lake was exactly what Emily had expected. Elegant, poised, with Anthony's sharp eyes and a smile that gave nothing away. She was 62, though she could have passed for 50, dressed in a cream suit that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent. "Emily. How lovely to finally meet you." Patricia's handshake was firm. "Anthony hasn't stopped talking about you for weeks." Anthony, sitting beside Emily, cleared his throat. "Mom. What? It's true. You called me at 7 in the morning last Tuesday just to tell me about some gallery exhibit Emily recommended." Emily felt her cheeks warm. She glanced at Anthony, who was definitely blushing. "I was excited," he said simply. Patricia's expression softened as she looked at her son. Something passed between them, some understanding Emily wasn't quite privy to. Then Patricia turned her attention back to Emily. "Anthony tells me you're an art consultant. That must be fascinating work." They talked easily through lunch. Patricia asked intelligent questions about Emily's business, her background, her thoughts on the current art market. Emily had prepared for judgment or coldness, but Patricia was warm, engaging, genuinely interested. It wasn't until dessert arrived that the conversation shifted. "I understand you helped Anthony acquire a Bearden piece," Patricia said. "The one he has in his study now." "Actually, he helped me," Emily corrected. "I was bidding on a different piece for a client. Anthony was kind enough to let me have it and purchased another for his collection instead." "That doesn't sound like the Anthony I know." Patricia's gaze moved to her son. "The Anthony I know doesn't lose bidding wars." "I didn't lose. I just decided something else mattered more." The way he looked at Emily when he said it made her heart skip. Patricia set down her fork. "Emily, may I be direct with you?" "Of course. My son hasn't brought anyone to meet me in 6 years. Not since his engagement ended." She paused. That relationship was complicated. Difficult. When it finally fell apart, I watched Anthony retreat into his work completely. No personal life. No connections outside of business. Just endless meetings and corporate strategy. Emily felt Anthony tense beside her. "Mom, I don't think." Patricia held up a hand. "Let me finish. What I'm trying to say is that I've watched my son become extraordinarily successful and profoundly lonely. And now I'm watching him smile more in one lunch than I've seen in 3 years. So whatever is happening between you two, I approve." The relief on Anthony's face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you," Emily said quietly. "That means a lot." After lunch, Anthony walked Emily to her car while Patricia went to her own vehicle. The afternoon sun was warm, and Newbury Street bustled with Saturday shoppers. "I'm sorry about my mother," Anthony said. "She can be intense. I liked her. She loves you. That's clear." They reached Emily's car, and Anthony leaned against it, his hands in his pockets. "What she said about my engagement. I should probably tell you about that." Emily's stomach tightened, but she nodded. "Her name was Victoria. We met through work, started dating when I was 31. She was smart, ambitious, understood the demands of my career." Anthony looked up at the sky. "We got engaged after 2 years. Set a wedding date. Then my father got sick." Emily wanted to reach for him but held back, sensing he needed to finish. "The last 6 months of his life were hard. I was managing the company transition, taking care of him, planning a wedding. Victoria was patient at first. But as things got worse, she started pushing. Wanted me to delegate more. Said I was letting grief consume me." His jaw tightened. 3 weeks after my father died, she gave me an ultimatum. Set a new wedding date within the month or she was done. Anthony. I couldn't. I was 32, I'd just lost my father, I was running a company I wasn't sure I was ready to lead. I needed time. She needed certainty. He finally looked at Emily. She left. Moved to San Francisco. Married someone else within a year. And I told myself I was fine with it. That I'd dodged a problem. That anyone who couldn't handle me at my worst wasn't worth having at my best. That's a reasonable way to think about it, Emily said carefully. Maybe. Or maybe I just used it as an excuse to not let anyone else get close. Easier to focus on work than risk that kind of disappointment again. Emily stepped closer to him. Is that what you think this is? A risk of disappointment? Anthony's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. No. That's what terrifies me. This doesn't feel like a risk. It feels like the safest thing I've done in years. And I don't know what to do with that. Emily covered his hand with hers. Maybe you just let it be safe. Let it be good. What if I mess it up? What if you don't? He kissed her then, soft and sweet, on a busy Boston sidewalk in the middle of the afternoon. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling for you, Emily Allison. In case that wasn't obvious. Her heart felt too big for her chest. It's becoming clear. And you? How are you feeling about all this? Emily thought about Sienna's warning. About protecting her heart. About all the sensible reasons to go slow. Then she thought about how Anthony looked at her like she was the most interesting person in any room. How he remembered the small things she mentioned in passing. How he'd given up a painting to make her client happy. I'm falling too, she whispered. His smile was brilliant. 2 weeks later, everything changed. August 24, 2024. Emily was in her office, reviewing portfolios for a new client, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Emily Allison. Ms. Allison, this is Jennifer Torres from the Boston Business Journal. I'm working on a story about Lake Industries and I was hoping to get a comment from you. Emily frowned. I don't work for Lake Industries. I think you have the wrong person. No, I have the right person. We're running a feature on Anthony Lake's business practices, and sources tell us you're his current romantic interest. We wanted to ask about the Bearden transaction from June. Emily's blood went cold. I have no comment. So you're not denying the relationship? I'm not confirming anything. This call is over. Emily hung up, her hands shaking. She stared at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. It rang again. Different number. Then again. Then her email pinged. Then again. By the time Anthony called 20 minutes later, Emily had received contact from 4 different media outlets, all asking about their relationship, all implying something inappropriate about the Bearden sale. Emily, I just heard. I'm so sorry. Anthony's voice was tight. Someone leaked information about the auction to the press. They're trying to make it seem like I used my wealth to manipulate you. That's not what happened. I know that. You know that. But they're running with it anyway. My PR team is working on a statement. Emily's mind raced. This could hurt my business, Anthony. If clients think I'm compromised, that I'd let personal relationships influence my professional judgment. I know. We'll fix this. I promise. But even as he said it, Emily wondered how. The story was already out there. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. That evening, the article went live. The headline made Emily's stomach turn: Lake Industries CEO's Art of the Deal, Romance or Business Strategy. The piece was carefully worded to avoid outright accusations, but the implications were clear. It suggested Anthony had pursued Emily to gain access to the art world. That the Bearden transaction was somehow improper. That Emily might be using the relationship for financial gain. None of it was true. All of it sounded plausible enough to cause damage. Emily sat in her apartment, reading the article for the 3rd time, when Sienna let herself in with her spare key. I saw the article. Are you okay? My professional reputation is being questioned in a major business publication. So no, not really. Sienna sat beside her. What did Anthony say? That he's sorry. That his team is handling it. Emily set down her phone. But here's the thing. This is his world. Corporate PR, media management, damage control. He knows how to navigate this. But me? I'm a small business owner. I don't have a PR team. I have me. So what are you going to do? Emily thought about Devon. About how she'd bent herself into shapes trying to fit his vision of their future. About how she'd learned that sometimes loving someone meant losing yourself. I don't know yet. But I need to think about this carefully. My business is everything I've built. I can't let it be destroyed by association. Her phone buzzed. Anthony, can I come over? I want to talk about this in person. Emily stared at the message. Part of her wanted to see him, to feel his arms around her, to believe they could figure this out together. But another part, the part that had watched her career nearly derail once before, knew she needed space to think clearly. She typed back, not tonight. I need to process this. Can we talk tomorrow? The response took a while. Of course. Whatever you need. I love you, Emily. There it was. The words she'd been wanting to hear. Sent via text in the middle of a crisis. Emily set down her phone without responding. Across the city, Anthony stared at his screen, waiting for a reply that didn't come. Around him, his penthouse felt cavernous and empty. He'd finally told her he loved her, and she hadn't said it back. For the first time since the auction, Anthony wondered if winning Emily's heart might be the one competition he was destined to lose. The silence stretched into days. August 27, 2024. 3 days since the article. 3 days since Anthony had told Emily he loved her and received nothing in return. He sat in his office, staring at the same contract he'd been pretending to read for the past hour. His assistant had learned to knock twice before entering, giving him time to look like he was actually working instead of checking his phone every 30 seconds. The PR crisis had been managed. His team had released a statement clarifying that the Bearden transaction was legitimate, separate from any personal relationship. Several respected art dealers had vouched for Emily's integrity. The story was already fading from the news cycle. But Emily still wasn't talking to him. Anthony picked up his phone, scrolled to their text thread. His last message still sat there, unanswered. I love you, Emily. He'd sent 3 more texts since then. Asking if she was okay. Offering to give her space. Telling her he was here whenever she was ready. She'd responded to exactly one, I'm fine. Just need time to think. That had been yesterday morning. His office door opened after the customary 2 knocks. Marcus Chen, his chief operating officer and closest friend, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. You look terrible, Marcus said, setting one cup on Anthony's desk. Good morning to you too. Marcus dropped into the chair across from him. It's 2 in the afternoon. And you're still wearing the same shirt you had on yesterday. Anthony looked down. He was, in fact, wearing yesterday's shirt. He'd slept in his office, something he hadn't done since his father died. I'm fine. You're the opposite of fine. You're a 37-year-old billionaire moping like a college kid who got dumped. Marcus sipped his coffee. Talk to me. What's going on? She won't see me. Won't really talk to me. The article scared her, and I don't know how to fix it. Can you fix it? Anthony's head snapped up. What kind of question is that? An honest one. Not everything is fixable, Anthony. Sometimes damage is permanent. Marcus leaned forward. I've known you for 15 years. I watched you build this company from the ground up after your father died. I watched you work yourself into exhaustion rather than feel anything. And then I watched you meet Emily and actually come back to life. Your point? My point is that you're approaching this like a business problem. Like if you just find the right strategy, deploy the right resources, you can make everything go back to how it was. Marcus's expression was serious. But Emily isn't a business problem. She's a person with her own fears and her own life. Maybe the question isn't how you fix this. Maybe it's whether you're willing to let her make her own choice, even if it's not the one you want. Anthony was quiet for a long moment. What if she chooses to walk away? Then you respect that choice. And you figure out how to live with it. I don't want to live with it. I want her. I know. But sometimes what we want and what's best for the other person aren't the same thing. Marcus stood. For what it's worth, I think she loves you too. I saw the way she looked at you at the charity gala last month. But love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means being brave enough to let go. After Marcus left, Anthony sat in his office as the afternoon faded to evening. His phone remained silent. Outside his window, Boston's lights began to flicker on, thousands of lives being lived by people who weren't sitting alone in the dark, wondering how they'd managed to lose the best thing that had ever happened to them. He thought about Victoria. About how she'd left and how he'd convinced himself it didn't matter. About how he'd spent 5 years telling himself that being alone was easier than being vulnerable. Then he thought about Emily. About her laugh. About the way she explained art like she was sharing secrets. About how she'd looked at him on the museum stairs that first night, challenging and interested and alive. Anthony picked up his phone and typed a message. Not to Emily. To someone else. Then he left his office, went home, and did something he should have done days ago. He waited. Emily's apartment looked like a paper hurricane had hit it. Client files covered every surface. Her laptop screen showed 17 open tabs of art auction sites. She'd thrown herself into work with desperate intensity, trying to prove to herself and everyone else that her business was solid, her reputation intact, her professional judgment sound. It was working. Mostly. 3 new clients in the past 2 days. A commission from a collector in New York. An invitation to consult on a museum acquisition. The business was fine. Emily was falling apart. August 28, 2024. Thursday evening. Sienna had let herself in again and was now watching Emily pace around her living room. You need to talk to him, Sienna said. I know. So why haven't you? Emily stopped pacing. Because I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of what happens when my life collides with his life. He's Anthony Lake. Billionaire. Public figure. Everything he does gets scrutinized. Emily gestured at her laptop, where the article was still pulled up. I worked so hard to build this business after Mom died. To create something that was mine. And one leaked story almost destroyed it. But it didn't destroy it. You're fine. Better than fine. This time. But what about next time? What about when we're more serious and the scrutiny gets worse? Emily's voice cracked. What about when I have to choose between my career and being with him? Sienna stood and walked over to her. Is that what you think will happen? That you'll have to choose? Devin made me choose. Devin was an insecure man who couldn't handle you being successful. Anthony isn't Devin. Sienna took Emily's hands. Has Anthony ever asked you to give up anything? To change anything about yourself? Emily thought about it. About every conversation they'd had. Every date. Every quiet moment. No, she whispered. He's only ever celebrated what I do. Then maybe the question isn't whether you'll have to choose. Maybe it's whether you trust him enough to believe you won't have to. After Sienna left, Emily sat on her couch, staring at her phone. At the message she still hadn't answered. I love you, Emily. She opened her contacts and scrolled to his name. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Then her doorbell rang. Emily's heart jumped. She checked the time. 9:30. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, she saw Patricia Lake. Emily opened the door, confused. Patricia? Is everything okay? Is Anthony? Anthony's fine. Physically, anyway. Emotionally, he's a mess, but that's why I'm here. Patricia smiled gently. May I come in? Emily stepped aside, and Patricia entered, looking around the apartment with interest. She wore casual clothes, slacks and a sweater, her hair pulled back simply. I apologize for the intrusion, Patricia said. Anthony doesn't know I'm here. He'd probably be mortified if he did. But I wanted to talk to you, and I didn't want to wait. Would you like some tea? That would be lovely. They settled in Emily's small living room, teacups in hand. Patricia looked at Emily with those same sharp eyes Anthony had. My husband died 5 years ago, Patricia began. Thomas Lake. He built an empire from nothing, and he loved every minute of it. But you know what he loved more? Me. Our family. The life we built together. She sipped her tea. When he got sick, Anthony wanted to slow down. Spend more time with him. Victoria pushed back? Said the company needed him. That Thomas would want him to focus on business. Emily listened, quiet. She was wrong. Thomas wanted Anthony to focus on what mattered. On people, not just profit. But Victoria never understood that. She loved the idea of Anthony Lake, CEO. Not the reality of Anthony Lake, the person. Patricia set down her cup. When she left, I was relieved. I knew my son deserved someone who loved all of him, not just the impressive parts. Why are you telling me this? Because I've watched Anthony with you, and I see something I haven't seen in years. I see my son happy. Present. Alive in a way he hasn't been since his father died. Patricia's expression was earnest. That article was unfortunate. The media attention will probably happen again. Being with someone like Anthony means dealing with scrutiny. But Emily, it doesn't have to mean losing yourself. Not if you're with the right person. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. What if I'm not strong enough for this? You bid against my son in a room full of Boston's elite and didn't back down. You built a business from nothing after losing your mother. You're stronger than you think. Patricia stood. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But I am here to tell you that Anthony loves you. Real love. The kind that makes room for your dreams, not just his. And if you love him back, I think you should tell him. Before fear makes the decision for you. After Patricia left, Emily sat in her quiet apartment, thinking about everything. About Devon, who'd asked her to choose. About Anthony, who'd never asked her to be anything but herself. About how she'd spent 3 days protecting her business and forgetting to protect what actually mattered. She picked up her phone and called. Anthony answered on the first ring. Emily. Just her name. But the way he said it, like relief and hope and fear all tangled together, broke something open in her chest. Can you come over? She asked quietly. I'm already on my way. He'd been waiting. Of course he had. 20 minutes later, Anthony stood in her doorway. He looked exhausted. His hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, no jacket despite the cool night. Hi, he said. They stood there, just looking at each other. Then Emily stepped back and let him in. Anthony walked into her living room but didn't sit. He stood in the center of the space, hands in his pockets, waiting. I'm sorry, Emily said. For disappearing. For not responding. For making you wait. You don't have to apologize. I understand why you needed space. Do you? Because I'm not sure I do anymore. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. I was scared. When that article came out, all I could think about was my business falling apart. About losing everything I'd built. I went into survival mode. Your business is important. I never want to be a threat to that. I know you don't. That's what I've been realizing. Emily stepped closer to him. You've never asked me to change anything. Never pushed me to fit into your world. You've just been you, and you've let me be me, and somehow that feels scarier than if you demanded something. Anthony's brow furrowed. Why? Because it means I can't use fear as an excuse. Can't tell myself that this won't work because you're too demanding or too controlling. You're just a good man who treats me well, and that means if I walk away, it's on me. Emily, let me finish. Please. She took a breath. I've been thinking about what you said. About falling for me. About loving me. And I realized I've been waiting for the catch. For the moment when you'd show me who you really were and it would be someone I couldn't be with. But that moment hasn't come. You're exactly who you appear to be. Kind, thoughtful, generous. Someone who sees me and likes what he sees. I more than like what I see. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. I've loved you for weeks, and it terrified me. Because loving you means trusting you. Trusting that when things get hard, we'll figure it out together. That I won't have to choose between you and everything else I care about. Anthony closed the distance between them in 2 steps. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle and sure. You won't have to choose. Not ever. Whatever happens, we handle it together. Your business, my business, media scrutiny, family pressure, all of it. Together. His thumbs brushed away her tears. I love you, Emily. I love your drive and your passion and the way you see beauty everywhere. I love that you challenge me and make me laugh and make me want to be better. And I will spend however long it takes proving to you that loving me doesn't mean losing yourself. Emily reached up and covered his hands with hers. I believe you. I'm choosing to believe you. That's all I need. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home. Like every fear she'd been carrying dissolved in the certainty of his touch. When they pulled apart, Emily rested her forehead against his. Your mother came by tonight, she said. Anthony groaned. Of course she did. What did she say? That I'm stronger than I think. That you love me. That I should stop letting fear make my decisions. She's a wise woman. She is. I can see where you get it from. Anthony pulled her close, and they stood in her living room, holding each other as the city hummed outside. Emily felt the steady beat of his heart against her cheek and knew, with absolute certainty, that this was right. Stay tonight, she whispered. Are you sure? I'm sure. I don't want to waste any more time being scared. I want to be with you. Anthony pulled back just enough to see her face. I'm not going anywhere, Emily. Tonight, tomorrow, next month, next year. I'm here. For all of it. She kissed him again, and this time it was full of promise. Of choice. Of two people deciding that together was better than safe. Later, curled up on her couch with Anthony's arms around her, Emily felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Trust. The quiet certainty that she'd made the right choice. What are you thinking? Anthony asked, his voice soft in the darkness. That I'm glad I bid against you that night. She felt his smile against her hair. Best 200,000 I ever spent. You overpaid. Worth every penny. Emily turned in his arms to face him. I love you, Anthony Lake. I love you, Emily Allison. Outside, Boston slept. Inside, two people who'd found each other by accident held on tight and decided to never let go. September had always been Emily's favorite month. Something about the shift from summer to fall, the way the air turned crisp, the way Boston transformed into shades of amber and gold. This September was different. This September, she was in love. September 28, 2024. Emily stood in the back room of the Newbury Street gallery she'd rented for the evening, adjusting the collar of her burgundy dress for the third time. Through the door, she could hear the murmur of voices, the clink of champagne glasses, the soft jazz playing in the background. Tonight was the culmination of 3 months of work. A private exhibition she'd curated featuring emerging black artists from across New England. 20 pieces, each one carefully selected, each artist personally mentored through her new program. It was the expansion of her business she'd been planning for 2 years. The thing she'd built while falling in love with Anthony. Proof that she could have both. Sienna poked her head through the door. You ready? Everyone's here. Give me 1 more minute. Anthony's out there looking very handsome and very proud. Just thought you should know. Emily smiled. How do I look? Like someone who's about to show Boston why you're the best at what you do. Emily took a deep breath and walked into the gallery. The space was packed. Collectors, curators, journalists, artists. She spotted Patricia Lake near a large abstract piece, deep in conversation with a museum director. Marcus Chen was studying a photograph with genuine interest. And there, near the entrance, stood Anthony. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored, his hair slightly mussed in that way she loved. When he saw her, his entire face lit up. He mouthed, "You're amazing." Emily felt her confidence settle into place. She stepped to the center of the room and cleared her throat. The conversation quieted. Thank you all for being here tonight, Emily began. 3 years ago, I started my consulting business with a simple goal, to connect people with art that moves them. To facilitate moments of beauty and meaning. Tonight represents the evolution of that mission. She gestured to the walls around them. These 20 artists represent the future of contemporary art. They're talented, visionary, and until now, largely overlooked by traditional gallery systems. This exhibition is the first step in changing that. Emily outlined her new mentorship program, her partnerships with local art schools, her commitment to elevating voices that deserve to be heard. As she spoke, she felt the weight of her mother's memory, the pride her mom would have felt seeing this moment. When she finished, the applause was genuine and sustained. People moved through the space with renewed interest, looking at the work with fresh eyes. Anthony appeared at her elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. You were incredible. I was nervous. Didn't show. He handed her a glass. Your mother would be so proud. Emily's throat tightened. Thank you. For being here. For supporting this. There's nowhere else I'd be. He clinked his glass against hers. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. The evening flowed beautifully. Emily sold 12 pieces, secured interest in 4 more, and had 3 collectors ask about commissioning work from her artists. She moved through the crowd, introducing artists to buyers, facilitating connections, watching dreams come true in real time. Around 10, she found herself standing in front of her favorite piece in the show. A large mixed-media work by a young artist named Jasmine, combining painting and collage in a style that echoed Romare Bearden's influence while being entirely original. Anthony joined her, studying the piece. This one's special. It is. Jasmine is 26, working 3 jobs to afford supplies. This is her first major exhibition. The red sold sticker suggests someone recognized her talent. Emily smiled. Someone did. You bought it. I did. For the lobby of my new office space. Anthony turned to her. New office space? I'm expanding. Hiring 2 associates. Getting a real office instead of working from my apartment. Emily met his eyes. This business is growing, Anthony. And I'm ready to let it. Pride shone clear on his face. You never stop amazing me. They stood together, looking at art and future possibilities, until Patricia appeared. Emily, darling, I hate to interrupt, but I'm heading out. This was magnificent. She kissed Emily's cheek, then Anthony's. Don't stay out too late. Both of you look exhausted. After Patricia left, Anthony checked his watch. She's right. You've been on your feet for 5 hours. Want to get out of here? The event doesn't end until 11. Your assistant can handle the last hour. Come on. I want to show you something. Emily hesitated, then nodded. She found her assistant, gave quick instructions, grabbed her coat, and let Anthony lead her outside. His car was parked around the corner. He opened the passenger door for her, and she slid inside, curious. Where are we going? You'll see. They drove through Boston in comfortable silence, Emily's hand in his. She was too tired to guess where they were headed, content to just be with him. The city lights blurred past her window as exhaustion and satisfaction mingled in her chest. 20 minutes later, Anthony pulled up to a building Emily recognized. The Museum of Fine Arts. It's closed, she said. Not for us. He came around to open her door, and she saw a museum guard waiting at a side entrance. The guard nodded at Anthony and unlocked the door. How did you arrange this? Emily asked as they stepped inside. I made a very generous donation last week. They were happy to accommodate a private viewing. The museum was eerily beautiful empty. Their footsteps echoed through the quiet halls. Anthony led her through familiar galleries, past pieces she'd studied in graduate school, until they reached the American wing. And there, in a small gallery she knew well, he stopped. The room had been transformed. Soft lights illuminated a single piece on the far wall. Emily's breath caught. It was a Romare Bearden. Not the one from the auction. A different piece, larger, more complex. The block series, which she'd only ever seen in photographs. Anthony, this is. On loan from a private collector. Just for tonight. He led her closer. I know how much Bearden's work means to you. How much your mother loved it. I wanted you to see this piece in person. Emily stood in front of the artwork, tears streaming down her face. The collage depicted a vibrant city block, full of life and color and humanity. Her mother had a print of this in her studio. Had talked about it for hours when Emily was young, explaining the technique, the vision, the beauty. How did you know? She whispered. You mentioned it once. Months ago, when we were at the MFA on our second date. You pointed to a smaller Bearden and said your mother dreamed of seeing the block in person but never got the chance. Anthony stepped beside her. I thought maybe you could see it for her. Emily turned to him, unable to speak through the emotion. Anthony took both her hands. Emily, these past 4 months have been the best of my life. You've made me remember what matters. You've shown me that success isn't just about building companies, it's about building a life worth living. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emily's heart stopped. I know we haven't been together long. I know the logical thing would be to wait. But I'm 37 years old, and I've spent too many years being logical and careful and protecting myself from feeling too much. Anthony opened the box. Inside was a ring, elegant and simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. I don't want to wait. I don't want to be careful. I want to spend my life with you. Building businesses, collecting art, arguing about Bearden's technique, making each other laugh. All of it. He lowered himself to one knee, and Emily couldn't breathe. Emily Allison, will you marry me? She looked down at this brilliant, generous man who'd somehow found her in an auction house and decided she was worth fighting for. Who'd supported her dreams without trying to control them. Who'd given her space when she needed it and showed up when it mattered? Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. Absolutely yes. Anthony stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, and Emily felt like everything in her life had been leading to this moment. This man. This love. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying and laughing. I love you, Anthony said. So much. I love you too. Emily looked at the ring, then at the Bearden, then back at Anthony. This is the most perfect proposal I could have imagined. I had help. Your friend Sienna told me about your mother and this piece. You conspired with Sienna? For 3 weeks. She's very protective of you. I had to convince her I was worthy. Emily laughed and kissed him again. They stood in the quiet museum, in front of art that celebrated life and love and beauty, and made promises for their future. Later, as they walked back through the empty galleries, Emily stopped. Can I tell you something? Anything. That night at the auction, when you bid against me, I was so frustrated. I thought you were just some arrogant billionaire throwing money around. Anthony smiled. And now? Now I know you were just a man trying to remember his father. Trying to find his way back to what mattered. She squeezed his hand. I'm glad you bid against me. Glad you overpaid. Glad you found me. Best investment I ever made. They drove back to Anthony's penthouse, where he'd arranged one more surprise. The living room was filled with flowers, champagne waited on ice, and the Bearden he'd purchased, the one that had started everything, hung on the wall. When did you do all this? Emily asked. I've been planning this for 2 weeks. I was just waiting for the right moment. And tonight was the right moment? Tonight, when I watched you shine in that gallery, talking about your dreams and making them real, I knew I couldn't wait another day. Anthony poured champagne. You're extraordinary, Emily. I want to spend my life watching you be extraordinary. They toasted to their future, to love found in unexpected places, to second chances and new beginnings. At midnight, curled up on Anthony's couch, Emily looked at her ring in the soft light. What are you thinking? Anthony asked. That I need to call Sienna. She's going to lose her mind. She already knows. I asked her permission before I proposed. Emily sat up. You asked Sienna's permission? She's your family. It felt important. Anthony pulled her back against him. She gave me her blessing. Said if I ever hurt you, she'd destroy me, but otherwise she approved. That sounds like Sienna. Your turn. What are you really thinking? Emily was quiet for a moment. I'm thinking about the day my mother died. I was 31, and I remember feeling like I'd never be whole again. Like the best parts of my life were behind me. Anthony's arms tightened around her. But I was wrong. The best parts were waiting. I just had to be brave enough to find them. She turned to face him. You make me brave, Anthony. You make me believe in possibilities I'd stopped letting myself imagine. You were always brave. I just gave you a reason to show it. They made plans until the early hours. A small wedding, maybe in the spring. Combining their art collections. Finding a home big enough for both their lives. Building something together that honored who they each were while creating something new. As dawn broke over Boston, Emily stood at the window, watching the city wake up. Anthony joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. No regrets, he asked. Not a single one. Not even about losing that first bidding war? Emily laughed and turned in his arms. Especially not about that. Turns out losing was the best thing that ever happened to me. Funny. I was thinking winning was the best thing that happened to me. We both won, Anthony. Yeah, we really did. 3 months later, on a crisp Saturday in December, Emily stood in the Boston Public Library, surrounded by 50 of their closest friends and family. She wore a simple ivory dress, her natural hair styled in elegant curls, her mother's pearls at her throat. Sienna stood beside her as maid of honor, tears already streaming down her face. Patricia sat in the front row, smiling with obvious joy. Marcus stood next to Anthony, whose eyes hadn't left Emily since she'd walked down the aisle. The ceremony was simple, personal, perfect. They'd written their own vows. Anthony went first. Emily, you bid against me and won something I didn't even know I'd lost. You gave me back my life, my joy, my ability to see beauty everywhere. I promise to support your dreams, celebrate your victories, and stand beside you through every challenge. I promise to always overpay if it means making you smile. Laughter rippled through the room. Emily's turn. Anthony, you taught me that love doesn't mean choosing. That the right person makes room for everything you are and everything you want to be. You gave me courage when I was scared and patience when I needed time. I promise to love you fiercely, challenge you often, and remind you every day why we're better together than apart. When they kissed as husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. At the reception, held in the museum where they'd first met, Emily and Anthony danced to jazz music while their guests celebrated around them. Happy? Anthony murmured against her ear. Impossibly. Good. Because I plan to keep you this happy for the next 60 years. Only 60? Maybe 70. We'll negotiate. Emily laughed and held him tighter, this man who'd bid against her and won her heart. Who'd taught her that sometimes the best things came from unexpected competition. That love was worth the risk. That choosing each other was choosing everything. Around them, art hung on walls, beautiful and meaningful. But the real masterpiece was this, two people who'd found each other by accident and built something extraordinary on purpose. A love story that started with a bidding war and ended with forever. As the night wore on and guests offered toasts and shared stories, Emily caught Anthony's eye across the room. He was talking to Marcus, laughing at something, but his gaze found hers like a magnet. He mouthed, "I love you." She mouthed back, "I love you more." He grinned and shook his head. Even in this, they were competitive. Emily smiled and turned back to her conversation with Sienna, her hand resting on her stomach where, in about 7 months, their first child would make an appearance. She hadn't told Anthony yet. That news was for later tonight, in the quiet of their home, when they could savor it together. So many beautiful things were still ahead. So many moments to collect and treasure. But for now, surrounded by love and art and possibility, Emily Allison Lake was exactly where she was meant to be. With the man who'd overpaid for a painting and underbid for her heart. With the man who'd taught her that sometimes, the best victories came from knowing when to fight and when to surrender. With the man who'd reminded her that love, real love, was the greatest masterpiece of all. Do not forget to like and subscribe.